Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to the Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for the Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value for value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show. Good morning and welcome to the Road to Concord without Joe Bakanovic. We're getting ready to start into a new schedule here, as those of you that have been with us for a while know about probably, but that's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about today, is just kind of switching gears here and talking about what we're going to be doing going forward and that kind of thing, and soliciting feedback from you all, our classmates here, to see what you'd like to see going forward as we go along. So not going to be a very exciting show for you probably. So, but that's just what I thought about doing here. I tried to put a few other things together and nothing seemed to fit. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this as kind of an introduction here and solicit feedback so that we got it going forward. And I'm going to talk about, I've gotten some feedback already from some parties here. So I'll share some of that with you and we'll just go from there. Yeah, so Charlie's a professor. No, I'm not the professor. So let's start there. We're coming up here in just a couple of weeks on our 4-year anniversary of doing this podcast. Joe started this about 4 years ago, and we've went through a few evolutions. He started out running everything on his own, and then I joined the team, and shortly after that, Natasha joined the team. And that's one of the other changes that's coming up. Starting tomorrow, we lose Natasha. She's going back to school to get some education that she needs to further her career aspirations. So we're going to miss her. But I have told her she's got access to the channel here. She's not available in the mornings because of her class, but I told her, if you want to do something some other times, just let me know. I'll even back you up and she can come on here and do some shows or some shorts or something. But basically what's going on, Joe, he's been working hard at this over the past almost a year now. I guess it's been since we went back to the 5-day schedule. We have had times before that we cut back our schedules and things like that. And most of that has to do with what Joe does for a living to earn, money for his family. If you don't know what he does, he's a model geek. He actually makes models for scaled World War II tanks and stuff, and apparently he's pretty good at it. And but it's one of those industries that if you don't put out new products and such, your sales go down, and that's basically what's happened with his businesses, because he hasn't been putting out as many new products. His sales have kind of plummeted, and he's got to get that gin back up so that he's making the kind of money he needs to make. And with that said, we all got to, pay the bills. And that's one of the things we do this podcast here. And this isn't free either. None of us are paid. And but it does cost us money to actually put this podcast on. We've got resources that we use for the streaming platform that there's a subscription associated with that, so that we can stream to all the different venues here: Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, and X. And we also have a fee for Podbean, where we put the audio podcast out. And there's other associated fees that go with this for the blog page and the internet that we all have to provide for it, the phones that we have available for you to call in. And I forgot to put the phone number up here. Ooh. So I'll see if I can do that on the fly while I'm doing this here, because I'm not used to running this stuff solo here. But with that said, that's kind of why we're doing this, is so that he can maintain the standard of living that he needs to, and we'll do what we need to. But anyway, with that, we're going to talk about Charlie here for a couple minutes, and and basically what I thought about doing here is, I know that we've got some long-term people in here, but with that, we also have some new people. And there we go. And some people haven't been around with us for a long time, and they don't know some of my background. So that's what I'm going to kind of do here shortly, is just go over my background a little bit, and then we're going to talk about, like I said, the show going forward. And there we go. Yes, I'm putting this phone number up there. Yes, I see in the comments you're saying, oh, it's not necessary. And that is true. It's not necessary. But the point I'm going to make today is, we put this content out here for you guys. But that's one of the things is I'm going forward here. Again, I'm not a Joe. Joe, I've seen Joe sit down 30 minutes before a show and put a bunch of sticky notes on a little place before him on his desk, and he will create a show in 30 minutes. That's not me. Yes, Natasha.
Oh, just real quick. I think that comment was aimed at me, because it was just a warning, towards me not to, get educated beyond.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah,
because indoctrinated. Yeah.
Oh,
and I was just like, no, it's a technical school, trade school, so hopefully you'll have to worry as much about that. But
yeah, that is true. Yeah, she's just getting some certification she needs to work in the IT security arena. So yeah, I didn't see all the comments there. So appreciate you clarifying that. But anyway, but the reason I'm putting the phone number up here is you are more than welcome to call in today. In fact, you're encouraged to call in today and share your thoughts on what you'd like to see going forward and anything like that. But going back to that, for me, I can't put a show together like that, like Joe does. Not happening. I did work, in the Air Force. Part of my job was instruction, teaching. And, when we were taught how to teach and things like that,
they basically told you for each hour of your before a class, it takes about 8 hours of preparation, and that's about me. So it takes me some time to put things together. So with that, my goal right now is, especially as we start this transition, I'm going to be doing at least one episode a week. Joe's going to be doing 2, so you'll have a total of 3 at least. I am going to try to get to where I'm doing 2 a week. We'll see how that all goes once we go and that kind of thing. But that's kind of the commitment I want to make at this point, especially as I, transition into this kind of new role, if you will. And we'll see how this goes as we go forward. Because we do have, Joel will be doing his classes and I'll be doing, and then we've got Brett that'll be doing one class a month as well with us, which I'm really looking forward to those classes. So let's go back to the beginning here. I was born in southwestern New York, and I was, I lean towards the religious side on here. I know we're on the Road to Concord side today, and I know I'm rambling a lot today, but this is just the way it's going to be today, so you're going to have to deal with it. That's one of the other things too. You need to be subscribed to both the Road to Concord and We Who Are Lost, and you better have the bells turned on, because as we go through this, especially as we're going through this transition, into the new schedule, things are going to change a little bit. Most likely, because most of the stuff I'm going to be doing will probably be under the We Who Are Lost banner. I may do some on the Road to Concord, because I am looking at doing some things that are more, if you will, secular, if you want to use that word, that don't necessarily fit into the, purely religious bucket. Sorry about that. So we may be changing which shows are on which days and such like that. So we'll try to give you a warning as best we can, but if you have the notifications up and such, that will help you make sure you're finding the content where we're actually live on the air. But like I said, I was born in southwestern New York. My parents were not particularly religious. They weren't churchgoers or anything, but I did have a grandmother that was very, very devout. She started me out in the Assembly of God kind of venue, and later we went to a Pentecostal church and such, and I was as a teenager, I was baptized into the Pentecostal church there. And then as a teenager, how we just kind of freak out and do weird things. I checked out all sorts of stuff, Eastern religions and other stuff, and trying to figure out what's going on in life, like a typical teenager would do. And then I joined the Air Force right out of high school. In fact, I was on active duty midway through my senior year, because I graduated early, and so I never actually walked a walk and stuff for my diploma. I was already active duty, and in basic training, I even did the same thing. I checked out all sorts of different religions, because you could go to any religion on the weekends and such, there, because they had chaplains and stuff and meetings for everything. And so I went to all sorts of different things, and I ended up meeting a guy there that was a Mormon and yada yada yada. So I started studying that, and shortly thereafter I joined the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as they want you to call it. But and I was in that religion for about 40 years. And, good and bad with it. Mormons are very devout to their faith. I will give them that. and they are a fairly moral people. I mean, they do, hold to some pretty high standards in comparison to some other religions as far as uh, behavior and those kind of things. And one of the things that was good, being a military person and moving around a lot, because I moved on average every 2 to 2.5 years in the Air Force because of the career I was in and the way I advanced through ranks and things like that. The longest I was ever somewhere was 5 years, and the shortest was 11.5 months for a permanent assignment. So we moved around a lot, and that's one of the advantages of the Mormon Church. It is a worldwide church, and wherever you go, you can plug right into that social network. And it was there, and gave you some support along the way. So, yeah, their doctrines I do not agree with. If you've been with the show, you've probably seen my Why I Left Mormonism series and that kind of thing. But that's where I was at there. And I guess it's been about 10 years ago. It was around 2016 that I was following actually a Mormon apologist at the time. And as he was doing Mormon apologetics, he actually started reading the Bible, and he basically came along and figured out, some of the stuff that the Mormons are teaching doesn't quite fit with what the Bible teaches. And so he was making some podcasts explaining what he's discovering and what things were wrong and stuff like that. And this was pretty shocking to me because I was a pretty devout Mormon, and but I was getting to the point where I was getting kind of stagnant, if you would, in my faith, because in Mormonism you kind of have this checklist, if you will. You got to do this, and this. There's these kind of gates you got to get through. Baptism and priesthood and temple ordinances and all this stuff. And once you get through all these things, then I was kind of looking around, and I'm like, I've done all these things, and what more is there? And I actually prayed that prayer to Yahweh. I didn't know his name at that time, but I said, God, I'm doing all these things. What more is there? And he answered that prayer, and within a period of about 2 to 3 years, we slowly extracted ourselves from the Mormon cult. And I will use the word cult here. And yes, I'm using it in the derogatory form. They're going to tell you they're not a cult, but yes, they are. It is very, very difficult to leave that particular religion. And that's one of the hallmarks of what we in today's vernacular would call a cult. And it was not easy. It was not easy. But looking back at it, oh my gosh, I went from the frying pan into the fire. Because, this kind of racked my faith, because, everything I thought I knew, I was finding out that, this ain't right. I've been lied to. This isn't correct. But I found these Hebrew roots people that, they've got it right. They've got everything together. And so I jumped into that, and I'm like, this is great. Understanding the Torah and how the Torah is still around, and, the feasts and festivals of Yahweh, and keeping the seventh day Sabbath and all these things. I'm like, this is great. I'm getting the truth finally. And I thought I had it down again. I was, learning all this stuff and putting it all together, only to meet this weird guy. I started going with my wife. It took a period of time, because my wife kind of said she was done with religion for a while. It took her about 2 years or more, 2 or 3 years or so before she was ready to get involved in any kind of religion again. But we eventually landed in the congregation that we're currently in. And that's when, there was this group that one of our elders knew about that was looking for a place to meet because they had been asked to leave the Baptist church that they were attending. And they really didn't have any place to meet to do their Bible study and such. And, we had a place that we meet in a member's home, the matriarch and patriarch of our congregation. We meet in their home, and they've got a room set aside as a sanctuary that we meet in. And she told them, hey, we're not doing anything with that room in the morning on Sabbaths. So if they want to come over here and do that, they're more than welcome to use the facilities. So they came over and started doing that. And eventually I was asked to go and sit in on their class just to see what they were doing. And I met this obnoxious guy called Joe Bakanovic. And he was a zinger. And I thought, oh my, I'm done with this before I even get started. But anyway, I've told this story on here before. I eventually warmed up to him, and then I started checking behind him and found out, oh, he might actually know what he's talking about. And so as I did that and started studying, again, I had kind of another faith crisis, because it's like, oh, all the stuff I thought I was learning in this Hebrew roots movement, they're not right either. They're not getting this stuff right. They got some of it right, but it's not adding up, and there's pieces missing. So, and eventually, as you know, like about 4 years ago, Joe started this podcast, and I was right at the end of my working career. I was getting ready to retire. And, I started watching Joe from the very beginning, on the podcast. And, he was struggling trying to handle everything on his own, which it's hard to do this. That's why we're going to miss Natasha when she goes to school starting tomorrow, because in the future on these days when I'm doing shows, I'm going to be flying solo. So I'm going to be doing it by myself. So that's going to be challenging. But I told him I'd like to be his producer and help him out with the show. And he kind of blew me off. So I actually did a cover letter and a resume and formally applied for the job. And I sent that to him. I guess from that, he realized I was serious about it. And I came on the show, and I think it might've been Aaron. I'm not sure if it was Aaron or one of the other guys on here, but with Joe struggling at the beginning here, and I hope to have some surprises for you for the anniversary if I can get the time to put things together. But as Joe was trying to, learn how to do all the software and everything, and, he would fumble around sometimes and make some errors, kind of like I did earlier, and forgetting to put the phone number up here. And he, would apologize, oh, I'm sorry. And, this and that. And somebody told him, well, don't ever apologize. And so he ended up creating this persona of Charlie, who was kind of a doofus personality that, everything was Charlie's fault. And so whenever he'd make a mistake, he'd blame it on this fictional character of Charlie. So when I came on board as the actual producer, I said, I'm taking on the persona of Charlie. And that's how it came to be. That's why you see underneath my thing, it says producer / scapegoat, because whenever anything goes wrong, regardless whose actual fault it is, it's mine. And that's the way it's been going forward. And it's been fun doing that. So that's just a little bit about me. And like I said, when I started studying with Joe, And like it's been, was it Jimmy? Oh, it was Jimmy Zinker that suggested Charlie. Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. That's a good idea then, Jimmy. All right. I didn't know that history. So Natasha's on it here. She's our historian. She's been doing a lot of work. If you haven't noticed, she's been updating all of our earlier content that didn't get onto Rumble. She's been putting that up and getting it also on archive.org, so it's available for future generations. If we have that many years left, we'll see what happens with that. But and she's also been updating playlists and things like that for us. But anyway, starting to study under Joe and everything. Yeah, again, I had to kind of just wipe off everything I thought I knew and start over. And again, this was another kind of faith crisis, if you will, in my life. And it was a difficult time for me because it was a time of being unsure of what I really believed and what was the truth, and what is all this? What am I doing here? And it took a while to work through these things and get to a point where I was more comfortable in my faith and could feel that I could defend my faith if confronted with it. So it was a struggle. So that's kind of where we're at this point here. I've gotten to that point where I'm a bit more comfortable, but I'm very guarded, because as I look back at my theological experience, I see where, I was deceived multiple times and, and taught incorrectly multiple times. And, I kind of fell for it. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing here. And that's why we're so guarded. At least I am. And I know Joe is too, because he expresses this to me a lot of times too. And that's why you'll find us using language on this podcast. This is my understanding at this time. This is the way I see this. This is our understanding. And those kind of words, not saying, yea, verily, Yahweh says this is the way it is, or something like that. No, you ain't going to hear that here unless we're reading it out of the scriptures. Because we're trying to be very careful as we speak, because, I used to do that when I was a Mormon. I used to say, oh yeah, it's this way, and, it's this way or the highway, and this is the way it is. Yeah, I was so wrong. And heaps of coals of judgment are going to be thrown upon me for that. Because we also know that the scriptures teach that if you're a teacher, you have a greater responsibility and a greater judgment in the times to come. So with that said, that's what I want to talk about as we go forward here. And actually, this is actually working out pretty good time-wise, because we're almost time for the bottom of the hour break here. And I want to talk about kind of my vision of what I am thinking about doing on the show here going forward, and kind of the way I'm going to look at this from my perspective of, what I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to be doing it, and a little bit about your responsibility as class members with the show. Because this is, this format is okay. I mean, it's great that we can reach out to where we reach, but I would much prefer to have a classroom with people sitting in front of me, and so would Joe, because you get so much better feedback that way. Because we don't want you to just be sitting there and listening to us and, and just believing what we say and whatever. No, we want you to be participants and actually checking this stuff out for yourself. Yes, Natasha.
I get what you're saying, but I feel like there might be a bit of a drawback to that.
What's
At
that?
least whenever I'm able to be on here. Many people would probably frown if I had my shotgun pointing outside the window, to snipe bots and whatnot in the real life setting, I'm just saying. We might have to worry about more than just getting censored.
Right. Yeah, we do have some of that going on. In fact, earlier in the show, we used to have these snake people come on and prank call us and everything else. It was annoying. We don't want that kind of participation. We do want, people with valid questions or suggestions or comments. And most of the guys here or gals, everybody, I'm using guys as a general term. You do have good comments along the way here, but that's what I'll talk about here in a little bit after we go to the break, and we'll go from there. So that's just kind of a little bit about me. And like I said, after we take the break here in a couple minutes here, we will talk about where we're going forward, at least where I'm seeing it right now. And that's where, get your comments. If you've got ideas for the show, suggestions, things you'd like covered on the show. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all biblical stuff. I've done finance stuff before. I've done emergency communications before. I do have a background in emergency preparedness and that kind of thing. I used to do that in the military. And so I've got a little bit of that background. I'm a firearms instructor, NRA firearms instructor. So if One Shot's out there, he could help me out. There's things we can do there. So just any topics that you're interested in. And, if it's something that I'm not familiar with, maybe something Joe could handle, or we could even find maybe some class members here that might be interested in doing things, like we've got Brett coming on to help us out. So anyway, let's go to the break here, Natasha, and we will pick it up on the other side and talk about the future of the show, at least from my perspective. So take it away. All right, welcome back. And like I said, this segment of the show, I'm just going to talk about the way I see the show going forward as far as my participation and what we're going to be doing, at least from what I have right now. And like I was saying, we're trying to teach here. We're trying to put this together as a classroom setting. That's what we've been doing from the beginning, and part of that requires a participation on your part as classmates, because we don't want you to believe a word that we say. We want you to go and check it for yourself. We try our best to provide you with our source material, where we're getting the ideas and such that we're getting. And we challenge you to go check those out for yourself. And if you find, hey, you know, this doesn't add up to me, I see it this way, and here's my resources to show my position. We welcome those kind of things. In fact, we've actually changed our position on several things over the years because classmates have said, hey, you know, I see it this way and here's why. And then we've looked at what they provided and we're like, yeah, you're right. We think you're onto something here. And we've changed our positions. And that's what we want to try to do here. And so the way I'm going to look at this going forward, you know, Aaron, I think it was at the beginning of the show, said Charlie's a professor today. No, Charlie is not the professor. The way I'm going to look at this going forward is we are going to gather together and we're just going to sit down and have fireside chats, if you will, or whatever. We're going to learn together. That's the way I want to look at this going forward. Yeah, I'm the one, you know, flapping my jaws here, but like I said, I want your input. I want your participation so that we can have discussions. Oh, don't sell yourself short, Charlie. It's not selling myself short. That's not what I'm trying to do here, John. I'm trying to approach this as everyone is involved, that we're having discussions rather than just a one-way teaching, if you will, where we're having discussions rather than just, you know, me flapping my jaws and you're saying, okay, yay, verily, because I don't want that. And the reason is from my background that I talked about earlier. You know, I've been wrong many, many times, very, very wrong. And I don't want that. And so that's where I need your help. If you see where I'm going off course, hey, feel free, please correct me. And Joe will tell you the same thing, I'm sure. So I want this to be more of a discussion kind of thing, and basically studying together rather than just listening to a quote unquote teacher that, you know, supposedly knows everything. No, not going to do that. But so what am I going to cover? And that's still open. I've got some suggestions. Joe's given me some suggestions. One of our classmates actually sent us a wonderful email with several suggestions of things that we can cover. And I'm just going to kind of talk about some of these right now, just to let you know some of the things that I'm looking at doing here in the future. And then hopefully during this time, if you have ideas, pop them in the comments here. Natasha will grab those and throw them up here, and I'll even add them to my I got a little Word document here that I'm keeping for just kind of show ideas and topics and things like that. One of the things that Joe recommended and then there's another classmate that's asked for this too. I have started a series on learning biblical Hebrew. I am going to incorporate a few more classes of that. But with that, as I've explained in that series, I'm only going to take you so far, because when I started learning biblical Hebrew, my grand evil plan was to create a YouTube channel and teach the world biblical Hebrew, and make it freely available to anyone that wanted it, and that kind of thing. As I started under my current teacher, she's a doctoral student in Israel, so she's there in the land. She speaks, Hebrew, modern Hebrew, and she's well studied in both Hebrew and Greek. I'm actually learning both languages now. It wasn't long after I started learning under her that I realized that no, this is not going to work, not the way I envisioned it, because once you get, my plan is probably with what I'm going to do, on the show here, is take you up to maybe the introduction to verbs and talk a little bit about how verbs are structured and explain the different binyan, or the different types of verbs. But that's going to be a very, high level overview. And after that, I'm going to say, if you want anything after this, you need to go find a one-on-one teacher, or a small group teacher, because it just gets too much to try to do in this format, especially in, like I said, in this format that we have here, where it's more of a one-way kind of thing. Yes, we do have the comments here and people can call in, but this is more of something that you do more like on a Zoom or a Google Meet kind of thing. That's the way we do ours. My interaction with my teacher, and you really need that. So that is one thing that I will be including here. And but one of the things that Joe has recommended, and he's even given me a laundry list here of Hebrew and Greek words that are significant to the Bible. And most of these are challenging words that that the interpretations are, need some discussion. Like, for example, the first one he's got on here is chesed. And if you've been with the show for any period of time, you've heard me talk about this word before. In fact, it's one of my favorite Hebrew words. And if you were to ask me the definition of chesed, that would be a podcast probably all on its own. that could go perhaps even an hour's time just discussing that word alone. And so he's got a list here: chesed, faith and grace; Torah versus law; love; heart versus mind; wisdom versus knowledge; holy or set apart in relationship to clean and unclean; the concept of saved in the process of salvation; ecclesia in association with church; and and I've added on here monogenes. That's a Greek word that I'd like to cover. So that's just some things that you may see in the future. Someone suggested, I don't remember who gave me this one. It doesn't matter, but someone asked about Noahide laws. That's something that we may cover in the future. And then one of our class members sent me a nice email, and he's actually recommended a book study. It's one that we actually did do a few years ago in our congregation. And the book is titled The Pauline Paradox. It's put out by 119 Ministries. And it's a pretty good coverage of Paul from the perspective of acknowledging him as a Pharisee of Pharisees, a Torah observant Jew, and looking at his background, and they do a pretty good coverage of how he uses the Greek word nomos, which is the word law in most English translations, and they do a pretty good coverage of that. And so that is one of the things I am looking at probably doing. And let's see here. I'm looking through his email here because he had a couple other suggestions here. Oh, he's suggesting that we cover some of the well, he calls it false doctrines of the Christian church, mainstream Christianity, and kind of looking at those from our perspective and how we see them from our perspective, and the differences we see, and providing some, I'm sure he's looking for the biblical resources behind that to kind of defend our position in those kind of things. And I think that's a good thing. And also even addressing, because, like I talked about in my history, yeah, I came out of Mormonism, supposedly a kind of a quasi-Christian religion. I don't know that I would technically call them Christians today from my understanding, but they do acknowledge Jesus as the Savior. Just whether their understanding is accurate, that's another topic for another story. But like I said, when I came out of Mormonism, I jumped right into the fire of the Hebrew Roots movement. And so he's saying, well, can you address some of these different ways that people are looking at the Hebrew Roots movement? He calls it the Torah movement in his email, but that I think is what he's talking about here. And we may do that. In fact, some of this we're going to be covering with our friend Brett that Joe's got coming on the show now to help us with early church history and things like that. And one of the things that they're planning on doing in the future is what they're calling sticky wickets. Some of the topics that are points of contention between Christianity and Hebrew Roots, and even what we, because we don't feel that we're kind of not even in either one of those categories. We're kind of separate. We kind of call our walk the way. That's what the Bible calls it. And we're kind of, the way I look at it is, you've got Christianity on one side and you got Hebrew Roots on the other side, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, at least from my experience, the way I kind of view this, at least from this my current understanding. And so that's the kind of things that we're looking at. And that's pretty much what I've got already, documented here that people have asked for, and the things that I'm looking at. And like I said, I'm probably going to do some more things along the way of finance. I think there's a need out there for some more practical advice in that arena. And I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but I have been fortunate enough throughout my life to, dabble in investing and saving for retirement. And we're comfortably retired and are doing well, and, that kind of thing. And I look around me and I see people that are not paying attention to those kind of things, and it causes a lot of problems for people once they get into their golden years, as they call them. Sometimes they're not as golden if you don't have the financial resources you need to keep your head above water. And so I do have some concerns in that area that I'd like to perhaps address as we go along, and try to provide some ideas to help and that kind of thing. Not sure exactly what I'll cover in that. I have done a couple classes on finance and kind of doing it from a biblical perspective, but also, kind of giving some helpful hints, just in the real world of how things work today. But that's one of the things that I'm looking at as well. So that's kind of where I'm looking at going. And like I said, I want to look at this. Oh, yeah, I didn't have that. Let me put this on here because isn't Yahweh Hebrew for the way? No, actually, Yahweh, as best I understand it, the way to translate Yahweh would be, when Moses first encountered Yahweh on the mount, when the burning bush encounter, he said, "I am." That's almost the translation of what Yahweh means. It's basically he who exists, is the best understanding I have of what Yahweh means. And let me put something else in here because I forgot to cover this. And let me put this in here so I don't forget it in the future. One of the other things that I'm thinking about doing is right now we're finishing up. We've only got a few more weeks left in Genesis. We just finished Jeremiah, and Joe's going to be starting into the New Testament here. He's just going to do an intro, I think, of some sort Wednesday this week. But he's going to start going through the New Testament. I don't know exactly. He's toying with whether he's going to start with Matthew or Mark or whatever, but he'll be working on that. And you guys have seemed to enjoy these, we call them book studies. And one of the things I thought about doing is we're just about at the end of the Genesis series. And so what I'm considering doing for one of the shows during the week is to just continue that. Once we finish Genesis, that I'll pick that up on the Old Testament side, and we'll roll into Exodus and cover that, kind of like we've been doing, with Genesis and Jeremiah and such that we've been doing. I think we did Hosea a while ago and things like that. So that's one of the things I'm considering doing as well, going forward. So that's what I'm looking at doing, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at doing this going forward. And but again, if I don't have the email up here, I didn't put that up, but joe@theroadtoconcord.com or admin@wewhoarelost.com. If you have additional suggestions on what you'd like me to cover on my portion of the shows going forward, or Joe for his portions of the show that he's going to be doing going forward, please send those ideas. If there's topics that you're struggling with in your personal study or whatever, and you're like, I don't understand this topic. I don't understand why Yeshua said this or the prophets say this, and it looks like it's, any of those kind of questions, please send those to us. And when you do, if you have any supporting material, or verses, or parts of the Bible that, hey, these stories here, I don't see how they connect or whatever, send as much information so that we can do and do. Oh, good one. I see, where did that go? Oh, did I just close? No, I didn't. There we go. In fact, I'm going to try to, can I capture this thing here? No, I can't. Yeah, we've got one here from Jenny. Maybe do a study on feast days and why are they commanded to remember and follow them. So yes, that is a good one. and sorry, I'm doing some of this live, but I want to capture this stuff so that I've got it for the future. So apologize for that. But that's a great one. Yeah, Joe and I were just discussing that in a pre-show the other day, some of the aspects of how we look at feasts and such today, because again, that's one of the places where the Hebrew roots movement gets it, but in my opinion, sometimes some of them take it a little too far, because the fact of the feasts are that we can't keep them today, not the way they were originally intended. So part of what, and this is kind of what Joe's starting to work on in going into the New Testament series and such, is answering the question of how do we live the Torah today, the instructions of Yahweh today, because a lot of these things like the feasts, we can't keep Passover because we don't have a temple. We don't have, the stuff to, do all this stuff. We don't have the Levites and all this, and there's a lot of those aspects of these feasts that we don't have today because we just don't have those physical structures and cultures today. So what are we supposed to do with that? And that's kind of the question, is how do we live the Torah today? In our current culture and environment, what is it that Yahweh's really expecting of us? And how do we know that? What can we derive? And this is largely going to have to come from the New Testament, because, the Old Testament, they're going to put it in terms that they were actually doing. But the New Testament, they're transitioning into that new covenant, the new way of doing things. And we've got to figure out what exactly does it look like. And that's a big question. And not all of it is ironclad, for sure you're supposed to do it this way or do it that way. Some of it, we've got to make some of our own decisions about and trying to figure this out. So yes, Natasha.
Something I just thought about. Have we ever done a show on Hanukkah or the history of it?
I don't believe we have. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, I didn't see anything when I searched Rumble, but I was just
and there's another one too that I'm going to put these down here. If I can spell it right, but yeah, that would be a good one to cover. And also Purim.
Oh yeah.
The Jews still celebrate Purim as well, and Hanukkah. I mean, I don't necessarily do all the things they do for Hanukkah, but I do recognize that period of time in my own life. I haven't been doing Purim as much lately. In Purim, from the way I've seen it done before, it lends more to a family with small children, because at least traditionally, the way they observe that, it's one of those times where the children kind of dress up and role play and kind of role play out the story of Esther and things like that. But that would be a good thing to cover. So thank you. I added that to my list here.
Oh, that's a good comment.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here, let me even put a little thing here.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks. Who is that? Deltros? Yeah. All right. Good deal. So, and that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Class participation here. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I appreciate the comments today and the ideas. And again, if you got more or whatever, pop them in an email and send them on, and we'll grab these and then start making things happen as we go. For the rest of this week, tomorrow, Joe tried to get me to do tomorrow's show. No, not doing it. So Joe is going to come in and do the show tomorrow. So he's actually, we actually forced him to kind of push off his schedule change to next week because we got, he's off today, but he's going to be here for the rest of the week because somebody, I don't remember, might have been JMW. I don't remember who it was. Somebody noted I think it was in the Signal chat that the next class is class 666. Ooh. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, here we go. So, and Joe was trying to get me to do that class, and I'm like, no, I ain't touching that one. But Joe is putting together a show about that, and we have covered this topic to some degree in our Ellis Schofield series about Hidden Beast and his way of viewing Daniel and the end times eschatology. But Joe's got some other things that he's putting together, so he's gonna give it. Oh, it was Mr. Quest. Okay, maybe that's who it was. Okay, John Quest. Maybe I don't remember who. I just remember somebody mentioned it. So, but yeah. So he's going to do a special on the Mark of the Beast kind of thing tomorrow, just because that's our show number. And then on Wednesday, he's going to, like I said, do the introduction to what we're going to cover in the New Testament. I think he's just going to kind of talk about why he's doing the New Testament stuff and kind of what our goals are and things like that, I believe is his approach for this class coming up on Wednesday. And then Thursday will be our Genesis class, which normally is on Tuesday, but we're pushing that to Thursday because of the special class that we're doing tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll be back to Judas Scepter and Joseph's Birthright book study on Friday. So that's what the rest of this week looks like. And I'm not sure what I'll be doing next Monday, but I'm going to have to get myself together and put something together. It'll be probably something from this list. I'm probably going to pick some of those words that we were talking about here and put together a study on one or two of the words or something like that. Oh, I like that. Yeah. A one-on-one biblical Hebrew session with Charlie is available. Just send us 5 easy payments of. Yes. And there is a possibility that, but I'll talk to a class member about that. I may actually work with somebody on learning biblical Hebrew to a certain degree. We'll have to see how that works out. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But other than that, I think that does it for today. I appreciate you kind of hanging with me today as I just kind of rambled around and kind of was aimless as I went through all this. But hopefully you got something and at least got an idea of where we're going and what you can do to help. And I appreciate that. And with that, I'll say goodbye till tomorrow, and we'll see you for the scary show. Have a great day. Take us out of here, Natasha.